and welcome to the 905er podcast with me, Roland.
I am Joel McLeod,
and it's our last day at school. I know last episode before a short Christmas holiday break, and we thought today we'd just do a quick look back over the year and some of the stories that we've covered here on the 905er to remind ourselves as much as anything of what we've talked about and some of the stories. And there's been a lot happened this year, in fact, so that we were questioning just before we came on what year something happened in. And I think we're now at about 120 episodes, which seems to have happened 122, which has happened very, very quickly. And it seems like, anyway, in amongst COVID-19 and everything else. And I guess it's, I hope that everybody's enjoyed listening to at least some of the episodes, and that we've provided some and that we've provided some information or some ways of hearing from people that you wouldn't have had before through other channels. So well, looking back on the year, we really thought there's kind of three big stories that we've been covering, and the first one is many people remember the Halton Catholic District School Board debate back in sort of April, May time, ahead of Pride Month. Well, Joel, why don't you give the kind of summary of what went on there and what's happened since?
It was an interesting time. If people want to sit down and grab an eggnog, and we'll travel back to the magical time that was April of 2020. A student went. To remind our listeners, a student went to the school board to petition them to raise the Pride Flag at their school for the month of June. That wasn't necessarily the right format, but it sparked a debate about why isn't the Pride Flag flown at Halton Catholic District School Board schools, which prompted one of the trustees, Brenda Agnew, to put forward the motion and say, "Hey, let's just make a policy. Let's do it." And that basically kicked over a hornet's nest of it was just nastiness, is the most polite way to phrase it. And you basically had just people coming on both sides of this aisle, and it just got really nasty and vicious. Ultimately, what I think the real story there, ultimately the flag did not fly. The board I stayed up live tweeting that night, and my God, was that just a night of chaos and procedural wrangling, the likes of which I don't think anyone has ever seen this side of Robert's Rules of Order. They ended up not passing the resolution, and so the Pride Flag did not fly. However, I think it showed there was a divide between the trustees, the board of trustees, and the students that they were purporting to govern. To make decisions for, the teachers that are their employees, and C, a good deal of the parents that they're counting on to support them. We're all pretty much coming out in favor of flying the flag. A number of the schools ended up tweeting out LGBTQ plus positive messages on their social media. A lot of the schools did some way of trying to show their support, but officially that wasn't necessarily. It was a murky situation. What I think the real story showed, and this is what sparked I think a tidal wave of stuff that came afterwards, was it showed a number of the trustees were very combative, very argumentative, and very uncooperative and they ended up really, I think, blocking a lot of the work that needs to be done. Not the nice to do stuff, but I'm talking like basic working of a school board functioning was now people started shining light on it. And the more they saw it, this is a board that does not get along, that does not get things done, and is not, it's a board in name only is what we've seen this year. Something we've been following. We've been covering numerous stories, and it's just, it's a story that I don't think is going to go away, unfortunately, in the new year. But that's not for me. Roland, what do you think about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be settled at the next election. It'll either be, and then it will either be settled or it won't be settled, and this state of affairs will carry on. The divide will either go away or the divide will stay. That sounds like an obvious statement. What I mean by that is that those members of the school board who often have a majority at the moment. I mean, it's we should point out, because there's always, when we use phrases like the school board did this or that, a section of the school board did all of that, but it was a majority. It was enough to not just block the Pride Flag vote, but a whole raft of other votes, which were just continually being derailed and delayed, and every method in the book, and some that weren't in the book, were used to just get in the way of anything that certain members disagreed with. And I think generally Vince Tomasi is generally sort of seen as the former chair of the board, is generally seen as one of the leaders of that. But and you're more familiar with the and the people than others. But I mean, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school there. I mean, it's on the record.
It's on the record.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's all out there, and it's just that this is what started out as what should have been just a feel good story, just kind of degenerated into just a comedy of errors for the Halton Catholic District School Board. I say this as somebody who I ran to be on that school board, and I quite frankly I look at what's been going on, and I said to somebody, I consider my loss to be the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because it's just. I cannot imagine myself sitting on there and being happy, having to do that week after week. And the other thing, one thing that I can look at and say is, this talks about the need for boards as a whole. I mean, this thing is just, it's gotten that bad that it starts questioning the entire idea of school board structure and the necessity of it in this day and age.
The chair of the board, Patrick Murphy, came on to discuss that there was a independent kind of review of trustee behaviour that was carried out. That was, I'm searching back in my memory here, which is a very unreliable thing to use, which was critical of the behaviour of that kind of clique of members of trustees, and some of their behaviour in terms of just needlessly getting in the way. And it's like, once you've realised that you don't have the votes, rather than letting the vote go ahead and losing it, just to throw everything more at preventing things from happening in a really, for want of a better word, bloody-minded kind of way of behaving, that would see meetings run out of time and extended, and just a continual kind of mess of meetings. And yeah, obviously this has given rise to a really quite very active and very well organised parent group. It's Halton Parents for Change, who we've also spoke to a number of times, with Dr. Alex Power, who are just saying, enough is enough. And that was that's kind of what got you to run last time, that we were already seeing some very
that's
unhappy things happening, but it's just gotten so much worse since the last election. Some of the people who were meant to be the new brooms after 2018 ain't such great brooms after all.
Well, that's the thing. It's something that we're going to keep following in the new year. So subscribe, stay tuned, because we'll be following the new year just to see what goes on, because there will be an election coming up. I'm curious to see what happens with this board. I do have a vested interest. My kids do go into the board, so I view it more as a bit more of a personal matter than just strictly professional, I'll admit. But
and one thing I'm absolutely certain of is that in the next 1 to 5 years maximum, the Pride Flag will be flying over Halton District School Board schools during the month of June.
Well, it already does it. The Halton District. It's the Halton Catholic that you're talking about.
Yeah. Right? Sorry, I misspoke there. And many. Already this year, multiple other Catholic school boards voted to raise the Pride Flag. I know it's the point we made at the time. There was no public commentary whatsoever.
No,
in remarkably little comment about it. Whereas when the opposite happened here in Halton, there was international attention was brought in a negative way to Halton Catholic District School Board. So it's the last thing that any politicians of any ability want to do.
Absolutely. Let's take a break and we'll go on to our next our next topic of note. Welcome back, everyone. So on with the next topic of note. And that was not necessarily, this one's not necessarily a 905 centric story, but it is one that, of course, it deals with and one that dealt with everybody, no matter where you lived in Canada. And that was this year's general election for the federal government, which was our it was lucky for us because it was our first live cast that we did. That was a long marathon of an evening for the two of us.
Yeah, it was a fun night, and to everybody who tuned in, the right word isn't, is it? But anyway, let's pretend we're all still using crystal sets, and it's the 1940s.
You got to see our ugly mugs on your computer screen, or God forbid if you had a streaming on your TV. But yeah, it was a fun night, and I think that the big, it's fun to give play-by-play commentary, and it's because God forbid, like I don't know how they do it on live TV, because that thing was, after a while you're just like, I need a break. I've been talking for like 3 hours straight.
Even for us, that was a push.
Yes.
Something came up in the last week that was just interesting, and it's a jokey kind of obsession of mine now, that I really want to interview Burlington's Conservative candidate at the last election, Emily Brown, because one thing I'm very certain of, Emily Brown has strong opinions. She's a highly educated person. She teaches at Sheridan College. I'm sure she's very smart. I'm sure her opinions are well considered, well thought out, and worth hearing, to be quite honest. And I mean, I'm just picking on her at random because Burlington happens to be the city I was living in at the time, and because
there was a very legitimate reason why, and this went to all the Conservatives, because when we sat down, we said, how are we going to cover a federal election from a 905 perspective? And we thought, do we try and interview every candidate? We said we don't have enough episodes, let alone time or manpower, or just it's just not possible. We'd set out on the idea of we're going to interview one candidate from each major party and ask them questions pertaining to the 905 region and what that party, if elected to government, was going to do for the region. And when we first set out, we made a list of candidates, and we started emailing campaigns to say, hey, do you want to come on to record? One of the first people we emailed, and one of the first responses we got back, was from Melissa Landsman, the Conservative candidate in Thornhill, and we were ecstatic. We were when I got that email back from her campaign manager saying she'd love to come on, and we were excited because we were going to say, yes, we're going to have a real conversation with somebody who's smart, who's intelligent, who knows their party platform, and who's supposed to be the face of the Conservative Party here in the 905 region. And you and I were really excited for that. And then we got the day before we were supposed to come on, sorry, but the Central Campaign won't let us on. They won't let us come on your podcast because there's a no podcast rule now somewhere from Ottawa in the Conservative Party headquarters. They passed this rule, and they told all their candidates, nope, you can't go on any podcasts. I don't know what they have against podcasts. Maybe they just don't like the feature. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, and the truth is they don't go on much of anything. I mean, you would catch the odd candidate doing the odd interview on radio or television, but basically it's the leader. When it comes to the CPC, it was the leader from beginning to end, and no one else really said anything other than those candidates like Pierre Poliveau, who are kind of a law unto themselves and can do whatever they like, including campaigning for the leadership during an election. However, I mean, that's, by the way, I mean, and I think it's a great shame. I mean, because I will tell you in all honesty, my initial reaction when I saw that Emily Brown was running in Burlington is like, oh, well, at least they've got someone smart running this time. This is someone who's got a career, who's achieved some things in life, and who is, hasn't just been sort of pulled out of I don't know what you'd call it, the kind of CPC box of nobodies.
Well, we thought that she wasn't going to be just a backroom spokesperson, right? There were. You and I have been in politics long enough. We know that there are certain writings, they just say, oh, we'll give those to the token supporter, the token fundraiser, the token, the person who's been around long enough. Okay, we'll give them that seat. Go run there. And we thought Emily Brown she was somebody who moved here, so it was an outsider perspective, which I thought was going to be a little bit refreshing. And we asked her regardless, and again, no response from that campaign. was very disappointing.
And the reason I mention this now is just because I noticed last week that Emily Brown was tweeting a couple of things through her Twitter account, and I said, "Oh, look, she can talk," and we got into a bit of a Twitter conversation, which was very, I hope, very respectful on both sides. It was respectful on my side. I mean, it was a disagreement because, I mean, the reason that Emily Brown, of all the candidates, didn't speak is pretty obvious. That she is someone with a great deal of experience in shooting and guns, and as a gun advocate, if you like, or certainly of sport, as opposed to the laws that are currently being introduced by the Liberal government. So, in all honesty, my feeling was, well, run anywhere, but don't run in Burlington or don't run in the 905 if guns are your thing. There are many ridings where that will play just fine. The urban 905 region is not it.
No.
However, I mean, if you're going to run, you put your name on the ticket, and and you call upon gun advocates to sort of sign your nomination papers and things like this, then you owe it to us to speak about it, and not speaking about it just makes you look worse. So, I mean, to Emily Brown, I know this is becoming a joke now, and I'm fairly sure she doesn't listen to this podcast, but if you're a friend of Emily Brown, please, in all honesty, I really would love to interview you, because at this point it's like, just do it. Come on. and we will interview you respectfully, just as we did the other candidates. And basically, in a half-hour interview, we're not going to sit there trying to trip someone up for half an hour. Okay. You'll get to have your say about what do you believe, and we'll put our point of view. We'll try and challenge that, but it's there for.
Aside from that, though, what did you think of the election overall? Like, what do you think?
I think the best thing I could say for the election overall was that it was better than the one before, in terms of that being an absolute low point. But this was, almost as bad low point. I mean, it turned out to be such a non-entity of an election. I mean, everybody ended up back. I mean, the one sort of achievement that came out of it, I guess, if you're the government, is that now the other parties are even more financially unable to really put up a challenge for maybe another good period.
I thought the entire thing was just a complete waste of time. I don't even think. The only loser that came out of it, I think, was Aaron O'Toole, because now the eyes are on him, and not in a good way. It's him. The eyes are now on him to try and save his job, not necessarily even be a good opposition leader. It's just, how is he going to save his job? Because now it seems like all the knives are out, which, not surprising. I was disappointed because I was looking for some big ideas. It's something we've talked about. It says we're in the middle. We are, hey, in case you haven't paid attention, people, we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. And quite frankly, everybody thought that, we pass it. The vaccines are doing their thing. And it turns out not quite. Omicron is now kicking our butts all over the province, it seems. And I wonder, what if we had some bigger, bolder ideas that dealt with the reality that there's probably other variants that are going to come down the pipe. We'll beat Omicron. I believe we will. I do. But not without a few more bruises on us. And the question is, when are we going to have a government that puts forward a big idea of, we need to change the script here? Because the script doesn't necessarily work for the average Joe. And I was really looking forward in the last federal election to see some big ideas from one of the three main parties to really change the script on how we deal with this thing in terms of the economy and our safety. My hope is out for the provincial election here in Ontario that one of the NDP or the Liberals are still going to put forward a big vision plan for the province to deal with it, not just, hey, Doug Ford is bad, because that's just I don't think it cuts the mustard anymore. You need to start swinging hard for the fences. And
in the electoral system we have, it's clear that in Ontario, a sizable majority of people, 60 to 65% or more of voters, of people who actually turn out and vote, do not want Doug Ford to be their premier, and will probably never vote Conservative in any circumstance. I mean, the vast majority of those are not floating voters that can float very much between, there's a percent here and there that will move. However, the system we have, that's good enough for Doug Ford to be premier for another 4 years, unless the NDP and the OLP can really shake things up a bit. And again, I don't think we can keep on doing elections again and again and again where everybody thinks, what the hell was all that about? And where the majority of people come out of the election having lost. I mean, the whole point of democracy is we get what we vote for, but we don't get what we vote for ever. And that's as true of Justin Trudeau winning with 32% of the vote, or whatever it was, as it will be with Doug Ford winning with 32% of the vote.
Yep.
That's not right. And we keep on doing it. People become more and more, whether they technically know anything or care anything about democratic reform and all those things, when we keep on doing it, each time you're turning more and more people off to democracy. Ultimately, you're opening more people up to the kind of extremism that we've seen in the States, and
I just think
it's hugely destructive.
I just think people want bold, they want better, they want, and that's something you and I were talking about on a previous episode. This idea of incrementalism, I think we have to throw it out the window right now. That this is a global pandemic. It has ravished our economy. The economy is not. Here's my analysis of this shitstorm that we're in right now. We have another variant coming into the province. It is going to just kick our butts for another few months until we cut off we go into another pseudo lockdown, whatever you want to call it, and we see the numbers come down. Then we'll start to gradually reopen. We're going to do it all over again, folks. That's just my prediction. And we haven't learned the lesson from the last three go-arounds of this, because that it's too hard work or whatever. We need to change the plan. The plan isn't working. We need to fix it. I personally am in favor of things like basic income to help people who might lose their jobs. I would love to see that happen. I would like to see stricter mask and vaccine mandates and allow employers to stop this. You can rapid test and that's good enough. Just say no. You're got to be vaccinated. I want to see more workers' rights where you can. If you're hired by a company, they have to give you the option. If the job is possible to be done from home, you can work from home at the same pay. Make it the onus on the employer to entice you to come into work if they want you in that office 24/7 or something comparable. But if it can be done from home and you want to do it from home, you should have the right to do it from home. Those are things I want to see. The fact is, we have an Omicron variant coming in. I looked to the south of the border, and we thought that Joe Biden being elected we're going to have a return to pre-Donald Trump. Clearly, that's not going to happen. If you're paying attention to what's going on south of the border, our trade agreements with them is very much up in the air. Right now, the Build Back Better plan probably isn't going to pass right now, but the fact that this was a threat to us would have devastated our economy. Nobody in America cared. Nobody cared. Everything that I read would show that no senator, no congressperson was sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, no, the poor Canadians." Nobody gave a shit about us. Nobody's going to give a shit about us until we stand up for ourselves and we say, "Hey, we need to change the script here. We need to do things a bit better. We need to manufacture more here in this province. We need to reach out to other markets to trade our goods, to sell our goods, have more confidence in our own abilities to build and finance things. Instead of always looking from some other company to build a factory, let's build it ourselves." That's what I want to see in the next provincial election, but I don't think we are.
No, we're not going to. We're going to see something very predictable, I suspect. Yeah, I mean, it's like we're really idiots if we think that any foreign government, whether it's the US or any other government in the world, is going to do Canada any favours. Of course not. They're going to fight for the toughest deal they can. Do we all remember softwood lumber and that whole thing? I'm not sure anybody really knows what it's about, other than it went on for decades. And
the world is putting up walls. That's the thing.
I think, yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing that we've COVID has revealed the limits of globalization and the problems of some of the problems of globalization. Back when kind of the more radical protesters were marching and just saying, globalization is inherently kind of evil, capitalist, whatever, I kind of used to raise an eyebrow at that, just because I remembered when the idea of free trade between nations was the most left-wing idea that existed in the world. Because it's like, well, if you have free trade, you can't go to war with someone you depend on for goods and food and products. And it's still, to this day, although that was a very Victorian 19th century concept, I still think there's something to be said for that you tend not to go to war with countries who are making stuff for you. But, when COVID hits and we don't have any mass, when we can't make our own supplies of vaccine, when we seem to be lagging the entire rest of the world in terms of having any significant supply of rapid tests. For those who follow me on Twitter, they'll know I made this comment today. I have family members scattered kind of on multiple continents. They have cupboards full of these darn things, and they kind of use them whenever they need to, just to check, am I okay? Yep, okay. And sure, the rapid tests are not 100% accurate and all the rest of it, but it gives you a kind of rule of thumb. And they can't believe it when I say, you can't get those things here unless you go and fight it out with the LCBO. Why the hell are we going to a booze store for rapid tests?
or forking over $40 at the shoppers drug market.
Making people drive to go and find a bus that's out there somewhere and then line up in the cold. I mean,
we just need to do better, and we need like this. Yeah. We need to shake off our complacency and catch up with the rest of the world. But alas, I don't know if those people are going to be listening to this episode. I hope they will. Okay, last one of the night and last one of 2021. What do we got?
Well, and it really is the last story of 2021, really, in that it's the taxi story from Burlington. That it's kind of a big deal, and it's a big deal. Obviously, it was a big deal for the taxi company itself, and above all for the employees of the company. And I always want to emphasize that, because as we go on, we tend to talk about the implications of various aspects of this, but ultimately this is a human story of employees and business that no longer exists in Burlington. But having said all that, the real question is, regardless of whether you think that the city had any significant role in the collapse of Burlington Taxi or not, the question is, how can directions from council to staff simply not be acted upon for years on end or at all? And that is, I think, a question that needs to be, that we need to kind of commit to our listeners that we won't let go. It's not good enough for the city manager, and I'm repeating exactly what I said last week, but I'm going to say it again anyway. It's not good enough for the city manager to say, we messed up, really sorry, it won't happen again. No, this is a big deal. How many times has it happened? Has it, are there other directions out there that haven't been that acted upon? Why? What was the procedure by which these staff directives were logged and registered and tracked? How could this happen? I'm not looking for anybody's head particularly. It's not that kind of ego thing, but accountability, yes. Part of the problem I feel with our municipal government is, you have councils that are all accountability and no power. Everybody thinks that they run the show, and they don't. So they get the blame when a building goes up that they don't like the look of. And sure, they have a role to play in it, and they're elected, and if you don't like the heat, don't go into the kitchen and the rest of it. However, at the end of the day, they do not direct. They do not control in any detailed way the policy that comes out of a city hall. So the people who do that are the staff, from the city manager down through the planners in the planning department, through the people who run the transport, through the clerk's office, and so on and so forth. Those people who generally are kind of nameless, faceless, for all sorts of good reasons, are kind of unaccountable. And yet they have a great deal of influence in shaping the agenda of any city. and of deciding what gets done and when it gets done. And so if they just ignore the one thing that councillors can do, which is give them a direction, then what the hell, you know?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much it, right? It's that they don't, it's who's running the show at City Hall. And that's something that we've kind of, again, we've talked about it in numerous episodes, is that it always comes up with development. Everybody says, why can't we order developer to build this tall and that tall and put this feature and that feature on? And I'm like, that to me has always been a red herring, because you go to city council and basically it's just, you just shout into the wind. There's no actual power in the city council to, like, in this case, it's clear in Burlington City Council, there's very little power to go and say, no, make this, we want this change to happen. We want to do this. Because I'll be honest, I invite our listeners, if you haven't listened to the episode, go back and listen. We'll put links to all these episodes, I think, in the show notes for you to listen to. But man, oh man, when the fact that, like, it sounded like the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing at City Council, because the story coming out was,
and I don't think, and actually it's kind of a correction I guess I would make to just a couple of words that Scott Wallace said at the end of that episode, in that I'm pretty sure that the councillors, particularly the new councillors, had no clue about this until November. So the implication that he had been speaking to councillors before November is incorrect. I don't think he actually meant to imply that, but it could be heard that way. However, he was talking to staff.
Right.
And staff had not brought it to councillors' attention. And whether you think the two councillors who are sort of carry over from the old council should have been more on the ball, I don't know. I mean, I'll leave that to others to decide.
But I mean, I guess what I was trying to say was that this, you know, like, there was just the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, in which case, like, how effective are you as a body? Like, what's the point of having you? And when Scott Wallace dropped that, because the narrative coming out of City Council was, or City Hall, I should say, was, whoopsie daisy, we dropped the ball, our bad. You know, it just, nobody was following up on it. We're sorry. And when Scott said, no, I've been talking with somebody at city staff for off and on for the 3 years. It's like, then this was, to me, I was like, this changed everything about that conversation, because to me, it said somebody at City Hall knew that this was still a priority for Scott, and there might have not been an official directive put over, but the fact that nobody followed up and said, "Hey, Scott's still calling me about this directive from the old council. Like, do we have orders from this current council to follow up on that? Or, you know, here's my report. Yeah, what do I do with it?" The fact that conversation clearly never happened, and if it did, whose decision was it to say, you know, shut up and go away?
I think, I mean, again, I've heard from multiple sources, from people who worked at City Hall in the past, people who work there now, whatever, with some kind of level of familiarity with this, that suggests to me that there was, it wasn't necessarily a personal feeling towards Scott Wallace or anything like that. It was just, oh God, this guy again. Why does he keep on hassling us? And it's that kind of being divorced from the reality of, here's a guy whose business is on the line,
right? Who's
like, I need something to happen quickly, and you're the only people who can do it. And this, you know, do you realize how busy we are kind of attitude, which maybe not meant in any kind of malicious way, but can be enormously damaging. Well, it's at that kind of institutional level.
Maybe it's a matter of complacency, that it's, you know, if you view here's the thing, your government, you're a municipal government, but your government nonetheless, you have immense power over the lives of the people that you serve. That's the thing that I hope that our listeners take away from this. Whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, you have enormous power over people. You make laws that can change clearly how a business is governed or how a business operates, and you can literally wipe out a business in a heartbeat with the stroke of a pen. You've got to take your job more seriously. And that's what comes down to the poor apology I think we heard from City Council, is that there was no, like, where was the anger in the fact that a business with 200 some employees in it is out of work overnight, and there's no again, I'm not calling for people's heads on platters, but just to say, No, an apology isn't good enough here, people. I want a report. No, you know what? Let's call in a third party investigator to say what goes on here. What actually is going on at City Hall. And you know what? That third party, you report back to us in a month's time. And we're going to act on that.
It's that there's this culture, and I understand why it is. It's this culture of kind of very respect in public, at least, and in council meetings. I'm not talking here about council on one side and staff on the other. It's very important that anybody who's not familiar with how our municipalities work understands these very distinct entities that are council and staff, and they are frequently at loggerheads. Not in terms of, not necessarily in a bad way, but councillors want one thing to happen and staff feel that maybe they prefer that didn't happen and are trying to persuade councillors of their point of view. That's all in theory fine. However, when the city manager said, you know what, we screwed up, there was a staff direction, we did nothing happened, we obviously didn't implement it, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, we have changed our procedures. I don't think it was actually good enough for the councillors in the room at that time to say, okay, thanks, let's move on. We appreciate how hardworking you are and how quickly you moved to do something now. It's like, no, you moved because you were in the shit, because you screwed up, and because now it was in the media. You were getting bad publicity, and so you moved. And sure, we all sometimes do things like that. I mean, it certainly is a motivating thing when you've screwed up and everybody can see that you've screwed up. However, yeah, exactly. This needs more explanation. How could this happen? Because the staff direction thing is the only power that councillors ultimately really have. And so if that is ignored routinely, and I suspect I would be astounded if this is a one-off, astounded. If we find that this is, and what other city halls is this happening in? And it speaks to, in large institutions, people get complacent, they get arrogant, and it's like, God, I run Department X. I've been here for 20 years. We've got this moron of a councillor who got elected here whenever. Why the hell do I have to listen to this numpty when I know far better? And it's a very natural kind of feeling. Like, if anybody who's ever worked in a shop will know that the shop assistants are always talking about the customers behind the bags, and it's like, oh, that idiot, blah blah blah. It's just part of institutions. I get that. However, in a democratic institution, you have to fight tooth and nail against that. And the reason why the person, male or female, with 20 years of experience has to listen to the person with 2 years experience, because the person with 2 years experience has a whole bunch of votes behind them, and that's the way it works in this country. And it's really important, and we're not just making a storm out of nothing here. Mm-hmm. You cannot just ignore the legislated legal power that councillors have to tell staff what to do. It's the most important thing in the Act. So yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to what we'll be looking at in the first part of 2022, I think that's a story we have to keep pursuing.
On that note, since we have a few minutes left, what predictions are you, or what stories are you looking forward to maybe touching upon in 2022?
The provincial election is obviously going to loom large. It's bound to. I think we've already kind of given the game away that our expectations are kind of low, but perhaps we'll be pleasantly surprised. I feel that, I was just thinking when you were talking earlier about the need for big changes, the great moments in history, or big moments in history, and this is a big moment in history that we're going through right now. This is going to be a whole chapter or more in the history books of this century when they get written. Really need big, great leaders to come to the fore, people who can grab the bull by the horn, grab the opportunity that COVID has presented to us, the opportunity in that we have gone. Everybody talked for years about the ability to work from home, and why the hell am I dragging into Toronto every day to work at a computer when I've got a computer at home? And that change has happened. But there's so much positive that could come out of this, but it needs leaders to kind of to really champion that. That's the idea that we I don't know if it's possible or not, but let's at least look at it. You know, the idea, okay, all these offices now sitting empty. Well, could that fill the need for affordable housing if you repurpose a whole load of office buildings? Yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities that no one seems to be talking about. Instead, we've got the leaders of the three major Ontario parties just talking about the same old stuff. And you know, I don't think we were recording when we were having a conversation about, you know, our kind of least favorite press release words. And I think I'm trying to remember what they were, but it's like, what are those? We call upon Premier Doug Ford.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just nonsense.
It's the same old.
I call up. On my partners across the aisle to no, you don't. You're trying to embarrass them by saying you want to do something that you know they don't want to do. They definitely don't want to do it if your name is on it. It's posturing. It's a game. It insults everybody's intelligence. You know, just knock it off. And if you really want to if you really want to put your hand out to another party leader and get something done, you're not going to do it via a press release. You're going to do it privately on a phone, organizing a meeting or a Zoom meeting or whatever. That's how actual deals get done with other parties. We know that.
Yep.
So knock off the posturing.
I'm going to say my top story is again going to be an election because it's going to next year's election year. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in Hamilton, and I will be looking at the Halton Catholic School Board elections. Both of those have kicked over a grassroots hornet's nest that I'm eager to see if the grassroots are able to get the change that they want in each of those elections. It's going to be I think both races will be tight to see if they manage to tip the scales of balance in the board and on city council with enough, dare I say, progressives to influence the change and to kind of put forward a more progressive or more egalitarian vision of both the city of Hamilton and the Halton Catholic School Board. Because in a lot of cases, I think that the future of both, I'm not going to say both institutions, but just I think the future of some interesting advancements are on the line here. I think, you know, if you want to for Halton Catholic, it's turned into one of those lightning rods of the question of why do we have Catholic education here in the province of Ontario still? And people look at the ongoing shenanigans there and they wonder, like, why do we have tax money going in there? It's a valid question. So I would argue that has become a microcosm of that debate in the province, which, again, I'll be curious to see how that unfolds over the next year. And of course, City of Hamilton, we have discussed that there are numerous bodies and entities that are heading to the ramparts in that election to, I think, finally force a lot of the old guard out and to bring in a more, I'm not going to say necessarily progressive, but just a vision of the city that isn't just stuck in, well, that's just the way it is mentality. Somebody who's going to say, yeah, LRT, maybe, development, maybe.
Well, and people who think beyond the walls of their...
Yeah, absolutely.
The mental walls of their ward, the kind of... And a traditional way to get re-elected is, everybody you meet who complains about their garbage can being left on the side of the road, you fix those little problems. Yeah. Because the person individually will remember that, oh yeah, Fred came out and fixed my garbage can. And it's an inbuilt incentive not to give a damn about the rest of the city. And certainly I think we see that in Hamilton. I think we see it in many cities, but some of the old guard, that's how they think. They just don't think of the city, but they are there to represent and make decisions for the city.
Well, that's I'm going to say that's it for this week's or this year's episode. You know what? If you're listening and you disagree with any of our stories for what's the top story in the 905, you know what? Send us a tweet. Send us an email. Let us know. We want to hear from you. While you're sitting around by the fireplace at Christmas time, drinking your eggnog, your cider, coffee, whiskey, whatever you're drinking, pull out your phone, send us a message. Tell us off if you want. I don't care. It's all good.
Do you know what?
Tell us off, because Lord knows you probably can't tell your uncle off. So
yeah, that's it.
That's our Christmas gift to you.
Yeah, please do.
And Merry Christmas, because we can still say that.
And happy, I don't know, Midwinter Festival to you all.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.